Assalamu alaikum everyone. Welcome to our HSC Foundation Center YouTube channel. Today we will try to clear our concept about the blood circulation of human. We know very well that for living a qualityful life or for living a healthy life, we need a proper and well blood circulation. And what is the importance of blood and why we need blood circulation, we will discuss in our another video which will be uploaded in this YouTube channel. But today we will discuss how our blood circulation is occurred by a central pumping organ, namely heart, which is present in our chest cavity. So let's jump into the video. Okay, so to understand the blood circulation, at first we need to know what is circulation. Circulation means, if I want to simplify it to you, that circulation means transportation of something in a cyclic way. This is simply called circulation. So our today's topic is blood circulation. That means we have to transport our blood throughout our body, and for that we need some mechanism, and this mechanism of our body is known as cardiovascular system. So cardiovascular system, this word cardiovascular is composed of two words. One is called cardio and the another is called vascular. So now we need to know that what is cardio, what does it mean by cardio, and what does it mean by vascular. Cardio is a word which is derived from a Greek word, namely heart. So cardio indicates our organ named heart. And vascular, the synonymous word of vascular is vessel. That means our cardiovascular system is composed of heart and a collection of vessels. So if we want to know about the heart is an organ which is situated in our chest cavity between two lungs. One is our right lung in our right side, left lung in our left side. In between right and left side there is a mediastinum. In mediastinum there is the presence of heart. And this heart is a muscular organ composed of a muscle which is very important muscle, which is known as myocardium. So now we need to know what is heart and what is vessels. What do you mean by vessel? Vessel means similar to pipe, one kind of pipe through which blood is circulated. This is known as vessel. And there are so many vessels in our body. If you can look into your arm, then you can see some of your veins. These are also vessels. If you can pulsate your artery for your pulsation, this is called radial artery. This is also vessels. This is composed of vessels and through which blood is circulated or blood is transported from one part of the body to another part. And what is heart? Heart is a central muscular pumping organ which is situated into the chest cavity, and below the diaphragm is known as abdominal cavity. The heart is present into our chest cavity which is situated just above the diaphragm. Now we know very well that above the diaphragm there are two important organs. Lung, if I just try to draw a lungs, then it will just like that. This is called trachea, which is known as the air passage or air tube. If I just feel this area is known as trachea. It is composed of cartilage, and there are two principal bronchi, and from that there are presence of two lungs. And between the two lungs there is our heart. Between two lungs there is our heart. This is the main concept or main organs arranged in our chest cavity. I think now all of you can get a clear idea that presence of heart while it is present between the two lungs. So if we want to know the clear concepts of cardiovascular system, then we have to deal with heart and also the vascular system. Okay, Now I will try to describe that how blood will transport it through the vessels by the heart to all the part of our body. To understand this, at first we have to know some primitive knowledge about heart. The primitive knowledge or the very primitive knowledge of our heart is that we have to know that our heart is divided into four chambers. The upper chambers are known as atrium and the lower chambers are known as ventricles. As the heart is divided into four chambers, the upper right part of our heart is known as right atrium, the lower right part is known as right ventricle, the upper left part is known as left atrium, and the lower left part is known as left ventricle. Okay, now in this figure, it is a very diagrammatic figure and schematic figure. It is not the proper figure to answer in your exam. Just to demonstrate it easier way, I have chosen this figure. Okay, now I am considering this portion as our heart, and these are the connecting vessels which connects various organs or various part of our body with our heart. If we look from the right atrium, we are seeing that right atrium is connected by two vessels. First one is this and the second one is this. These vessels is known as superior vena cava. As for superior, V for vena cava. This vessel is responsible for draining the blood or for transporting the deoxygenated blood from the superior part of our body. What does it mean by superior? Superior means the above. So the body part which is above our heart, this part of our body is drained by this vein or this vena cava, so that the name of that vena cava is superior vena cava, and the name of these connecting vessels which connects the inferior vena cava to the right atrium, and the name of that vessel is inferior vena cava, and this inferior vena cava will transport or drain the deoxygenated blood from the body part which is situated below the heart. That means which is situated inferior to the heart, and this blood is drained by this inferior vena cava to the right atrium. Our right atrium is now completely filled with blood. Okay, we know very well that our heart is a pumping organ. I have told you in my previous speech that our heart is a central pumping muscular organ. That means it is a pumping organ. What pumping means, at the time or at a period it can make a contraction of itself and relaxation, contraction, relaxation, and by this process it pumps the blood from itself to the whole part of our body. So now I think all of you have got the idea that why or how blood is coming into the right atrium from the superior part of our body and from the inferior part of our body. Then the right atrium is filled with blood, and at that time the right atrium will be contracted. That means right atrium will be contracted, and when the right atrium will be contracted, the volume inside the right atrium will be decreased. That means the pressure inside the right atrium will increase, so that there is a door. There is a door between the right atrium and right ventricle, and the name of the door is tricuspid valve. Tricuspid valve. What happening here? Blood will enter into the right atrium, then the right atrium of the heart is contracting. That means the volume of the right atrium is decreasing, and the pressure inside the right atrium will be increasing, and this increased pressure will responsible for the opening of that valve. This is called tricuspid valve, and this valve just allow the blood flow from the right atrium to the right ventricle, but this valve will not allow the direction of blood from right ventricle to right atrium. This direction will not be permitted by this valve. Only blood can pass through the tricuspid valve from right atrium to right ventricle. Okay, now the right atrium, the pressure of the pressure inside the right atrium is increased, the tricuspid valve open, and the blood from the right atrium will now enter into the right ventricle. So now at the time our right ventricle is filled up with blood. Okay, and when the right atrium is filled up with blood, the tricuspid valve will then closed, so that not a single drop of blood can regurgitate from the right ventricle to the right atrium. So the main function of the tricuspid valve, this valve, is to direct the blood from the right atrium to the right ventricle, not from the right ventricle to right atrium. Okay, so when the blood is coming in, or when the right ventricle is filled up with blood, then right ventricle will be contracted. Right ventricle will be contracted, and when right ventricle will be contracted, the volume of the right ventricle will be decreased, the pressure of the right ventricle will be increased, and this increased pressure will responsible to direct the blood from the right ventricle through this vessel to the lungs. That means when the pressure inside the right ventricle will increase, the blood will direct through this vessel to the lungs, and the name of that vessel is pulmonary artery. The name of that vessel is pulmonary artery, and this pulmonary artery then responsible for the carrying of the blood from the right ventricle to the lungs. Okay, and I have told you that this blood means the blood which is drained from our superior vena cava to the right atrium, from inferior vena cava to the right atrium, these bloods are deoxygenated blood. These bloods are deoxygenated blood. That means in this blood there is D for removed or D for absent, absence of oxygen. So in this blood, the blood which is present into the right atrium and right ventricles are deoxygenated. That means in that blood there is no oxygen, rather there is the presence of maximum carbon dioxide. And so that right atrium is filled with deoxygenated blood, right ventricle will also filled with deoxygenated blood, and pulmonary artery, in that pulmonary artery there is also deoxygenated blood. But when the deoxygenated blood means when this deoxygenated blood will enter into the lungs, then the lungs will make the deoxygenated blood oxygenated. That means now the blood which is entered from the right ventricle to the lungs will be oxygenated, and this oxygenated blood will be transported through these vessels, and the name of the vessel is pulmonary vein. Pulmonary vein. The name of that vessel is pulmonary vein. There are 4 pulmonary veins, but I have drawn only one pulmonary vein into this figure. And so what is happening? The deoxygenated blood enter into the lungs. The lungs make the deoxygenated blood oxygenated, and this oxygenated blood will transported through the pulmonary vein into the this blood is transported through the pulmonary vein into the left atrium. So at that time, in this time, the left atrium is filled with blood. And the matter of fact that as this blood is oxygenated blood, so in left atrium, the blood which is present into the left atrium, it also a oxygenated blood. It also a oxygenated blood. The pulmonary veins are 4 in number. And then the left atrium, that is the oxygenated blood, and at the same time the oxygenated blood will fill in the oxygenated blood will occupy the left atrium, and the pressure inside the left atrium will be increased. At the same time the contraction of the left atrium occurs, and then the left atrium will contract it, and when the left atrium will make contraction, the volume of the left atrium will be decreased and the pressure inside the left atrium will be increased, so that the valve, means this is a door, the door will be open. The name of the door is mitral valve. The name of the door is mitral valve or bicuspid valve. Then this valve will open and allow the blood to direct from left atrium to left ventricle. And when the blood will enter into the left ventricle, then the left ventricle will make a contraction, and this contraction can pass the blood from the left ventricle to the whole part of our body by a very important vessel named as aorta. So aorta is responsible for transporting oxygenated blood from the left ventricle to the whole part of our body. So it is the total blood circulation of our body. If I summarize it again, then the superior part of our body, there is a deoxygenated blood, and this deoxygenated blood will enter into the right atrium through superior vena cava. And inferior part of the body, there is also deoxygenated blood, and this deoxygenated blood will enter into the right atrium through inferior vena cava. Then right atrium is filled with blood, make a contraction, tricuspid valve will open, blood will enter from right atrium to right ventricle, and right ventricle will again fill with blood. Then right ventricle make a contraction, and this contraction will allow to pass the blood from right ventricle to the two lungs, and then this blood is deoxygenated, so lung will make it oxygenated by the process of oxygenation, and then this oxygenated blood will transport it to the left atrium by 4 pulmonary veins. After that, the left atrium is filled with oxygenated blood which is coming from lungs. After that, the left atrium make a contraction, and then opening of the mitral valve or bicuspid valve, then the blood from the left atrium will enter into the left ventricle, and again left ventricle make a contraction, and this contraction will allow to pass the blood from the left ventricle to the whole part of our body. This is the summarization of the blood circulation of our body. So that's all for today. In our next video, we will try to cover another important topics of biology in this YouTube channel.